In the last 15 years or so, the field of visual rhetoric has more or less exploded. The term is intentional, for very much like an explosion, visual rhetoric has covered an extensive amount of ground, going from something that was rarely looked at in terms of communication scholarship to a field in its own right in a mere decade and a half, and in many ways shook up everything that rhetoricians believed about their field. Visual rhetoric called into question many of the fundamental conceptions of rhetoric. If an image could act as a form of rhetoric, what else could? Could all images act as rhetoric, or only those that met specific characteristics? Is visual rhetoric limited only to images? What about architecture, for example? Can the visual act as argument? Communication scholars are still wrestling with these questions, and in the process a binary mentality is developed, pitting the visual against the word. Gauguin, 2004, states that highly contestable, the term visual rhetoric is invoked to describe a broad range of diverse scholarly interests. Yet however separate and decidedly contested definitions of visual rhetoric are, they nevertheless share a tendency to draw a hard-line distinction between rhetoric of the word and rhetoric of the image. That is, a dichotomy between the visual and the verbal features of textualized objects. Gauguin, 2004, argues further that one of the major factors that contribute to this divide is the tendency of communication theory to privilege logocentric approaches and perspectives, even as they treat an ever wider range of semiotic artifacts and practices apart from the scripted, printed, and digital pages. In other words, the word is placed above the image in a hierarchy of communications theory, and the two are treated as distinctly different forms of rhetoric. However, today's technology is constantly blurring the line between what is specifically a word and what is specifically an image. Typography is only one of many examples where words become or help define the images and images become words. Graphic designer Paula Scher, who uses typography heavily in her designs, states that, "My goal when I started designing for the public theater was to create a visual language as opposed to a logo." Scher's very choice of words, visual language, points to the blurring line between the word and image. Another example can be seen in the work of political cartoons. Over the years, the words have moved from captions, seen exclusively outside and separate from the image, to the practice of speech balloons in labeling, where the words become an integral part of the image itself. The problem is that while popular culture has begun blurring the lines between word and image, communication theory, as Gauguin 2004 points out, has not. This makes communication theory, as it stands today, at best a limited tool for exploring the rhetorical texts that are now being produced. One way in which scholars have tried to rectify this is by applying current theory of the word to the visual. Edwards and Winkler's 1997 treatment of the Iwo Jima flag raising as an ideograph is one of the more successful advancements towards this end. While the binary between the word and the image still remains, by establishing the fact that the image can act as an ideograph in much the same way as the new word, new conceptions of what an ideograph is and how it functions can be explored. Therefore, the goal of this paper is to examine some of those possibilities. What, for example, happens when a word becomes a part of an image, as explained above? Can an image be an ideograph? How does that change or complicate the understanding of what an ideograph is and how it functions? The rhetorical device, the 99%, is interesting to examine in this context because it acts as an ideograph on both the level of the word and the level of the image, thus further complicating the ways in which an ideograph is understood, as well as blurring the line between the word and the image in communication theory.